The pills in his hand were the wrong color. 4 capsules, orange and yellow, sitting in Sung Li-yun's palm like tiny grenades. He stared at them, his mouth slightly open, his silk pajamas rustling as his hand began to shake. Bonita Jackson stood 3 feet away, holding the bottle. Her maid uniform was crisp. Her face was calm. She didn't move. "You're late with the water, Bonita," Sang said. His voice came out hoarse. "I didn't bring water." The room went silent. Not the comfortable silence of a bedroom at night. The silence of a trap closing. Sang's eyes flicked from the pills to her face. "What are you talking about?" Bonita stepped into the lamplight. She held up the white plastic bottle between them. "The coating is too matte. The weight is off. Someone emptied your sedative and replaced it with digitalis. You would have been dead by 3 a.m. Heart attack. Clean." Sang froze. Not because someone tried to kill him, that was Tuesday in his world. He froze because she knew. This woman who'd been invisible for 4 years, who folded his shirts, who brought his coffee at 6 a.m. without being asked. "Why tell me?" His paranoia finally caught up to his pulse. "The estate owes you severance if I die. Why switch them?" Bonita didn't blink. "Because when you die, the people who killed you will burn this house looking for your ledger. I've spent 4 years building a life that makes sense. I'm not letting your lieutenants ruin my peace." She reached out, took the pills from his hand. Her fingers brushed his palm just once. She dropped the capsules back into the bottle like they were trash. Then she pulled a smaller vial from her apron pocket. "These are what you actually need." She tapped 2 white tablets into his hand. "They won't make you sleep. They're stimulants. You need to be awake when your specialist comes to check your pulse at midnight." Sang stared at the new pills, then at her, really looked at her for the first time. The sharp intelligence in her eyes, the way she stood like she owned the room. "You've been watching them," he said quietly. "You knew they were moving against me." "I watched the trash, Mr. Li-yun." Her voice dropped. "I watch the phone logs you think are encrypted. I watch how your guards look at the clock when you enter a room. People like me are invisible until we choose not to be." Sang swallowed the tablets dry. His throat clicked. "What do you want, Bonita?" She set the bottle on his nightstand, adjusted it so the label faced him. "I want you alive, because if you die, I die, and I've worked too hard to die in your house. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting tonight." She turned toward the door, then paused. "Mr. Li-yun, when your specialist arrives at midnight, you should ask him about the money transferred to his account on Tuesday from your uncle's shell company in Singapore." The air left Sang's lungs. "How do you—" "I clean your office." Bonita's hand was on the doorknob. "I empty your trash. I see everything you don't." "Wait." Sang stood up. The pills were already working. His heart hammered, his vision sharpened. "If you've seen everything, what else do you know?" Bonita looked back at him. For 3 seconds, she said nothing. Then, "I know your guards just sealed the south gate from the outside. I know they're not protecting this house anymore. They're sealing the tomb." "What?" "And I know you have exactly 7 hours to decide if you trust me. Because at 7 a.m., your uncle's people are coming to confirm you're dead. And when they find you breathing—" She pulled the door open. "Well, we'll both need to be somewhere else." She stepped into the hallway. "Bonita." She stopped, didn't turn around. "Why are you helping me?" The silence stretched. Then quietly, "I'm not helping you, Mr. Li-yun. I'm helping myself. You just happen to be part of the plan now." The door closed. Sang stood alone in his bedroom, heart pounding from the stimulants, staring at the white bottle on his nightstand. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from the realization that the most dangerous person in his house had been bringing him coffee for 4 years, and he'd never even learned her last name. Most people think saving a life is loud. Sirens, screaming, hands pounding on a chest, the sharp smell of antiseptic and terror. But in the Li-yun estate, where every surface cost more than most people earned in a year, saving a life had to be quiet. If Bonita Jackson breathed too loud, they would both die. She stood in the 3rd-floor hallway at 11:55 p.m. Her black uniform was still crisp despite the 12-hour shift, the white collar sharp against her dark skin. In her hand was a plastic bottle. It rattled softly when she moved. Inside weren't vitamins. Inside was a digitalis-based compound designed to stop a human heart during REM sleep. Clean, professional, impossible to trace. The hallway stretched ahead like a throat waiting to swallow her. Marble floors that cost more than cars. Gold fixtures that caught the moonlight through tall windows. Silence so thick it pressed against her eardrums. This house didn't creak. This house didn't settle. This house held its breath. Bonita had spent 4 years making herself invisible here. 4 years of folded shirts left on the bed just so. 4 years of coffee delivered at 6 a.m. 2 sugars, no cream, the spoon on the right side of the saucer. 4 years of being a ghost who cleaned up after gods and never asked questions. Tonight, the ghost had to speak. She shifted the bottle from her right hand to her left, felt the pills inside shift like dice. Somewhere downstairs, a grandfather clock began its midnight chime, deep, resonant, counting down the seconds she had left to choose. 10 seconds to decide. 10 seconds to step out of the shadows or stay invisible forever. 10 seconds to save a man who didn't even know her last name. The door to the master suite was 20 feet away. Between here and there was everything she'd built. 4 years of safety. 4 years of silence. 4 years of not being found. She thought about the woman she used to be. Head of logistics. Corner office. A business card that meant something. That woman had told the truth once. That woman had been destroyed for it. This woman, the invisible one, had survived by keeping her mouth shut. The clock struck its final chime. Bonita walked forward. Her shoes made no sound on the marble. She'd practiced that. After 4 years, she could move through this house like smoke. She reached the door, put her hand on the brushed gold handle. It was cold under her palm. Everything in this house was cold. She pushed the door open and stepped into the room where a billionaire was about to take poison. The air in Sung Li Yun's bedroom tasted like metal and expensive cologne. The temperature was set to 62 degrees, cold enough that she could see his breath when he exhaled. He sat on the edge of a California king mattress that cost more than most people's cars, wearing navy silk pajamas that whispered when he moved. His shoulders were hunched, his spine curved forward like a question mark. At 34, he looked 50. He didn't look up when she entered. He was staring at his right palm, at 4 capsules sitting there like tiny gods. Orange and yellow, bright against his skin. "You're late with the water, Bonita." His voice was sandpaper on wood. She'd heard that voice sign death warrants over conference calls. She'd heard it charm senators and threaten competitors in the same breath. Right now it just sounded hollow, used up, empty. "I didn't bring water," she said. The room changed. The air pressure shifted. It wasn't the comfortable stillness of a bedroom at midnight. It was the stillness of a trap closing, of prey realizing it's been caught. Sang's eyes lifted. Dark, sharp. The kind of eyes that had built an empire by seeing angles other people missed. Those eyes found her face and stopped. "What are you talking about?" Bonita stepped into the pool of golden light cast by his bedside lamp. The light was warm, but the room stayed cold. She held up the white bottle between them like evidence at a trial. "The coating on your usual pills is gloss. Smooth. These are matte. Rougher texture. They weigh 0.5 milligrams less per capsule." She watched his pupils dilate, watched the information process behind his eyes. "Someone emptied the sedative compound and replaced it with digitalis," she continued. Her voice was steady. A metronome. "If you take those, your heart stops during REM sleep. 3 a.m., roughly. The coroner calls it natural causes. Stress, overwork. Your uncle inherits the empire by Wednesday morning." Sang's jaw dropped. Not from shock at the threat. Threats were the wallpaper of his world, the background noise of power. He was shocked because she knew. This woman who'd ironed his shirts for 4 years, who brought his coffee at dawn without being asked, who he'd probably looked at 1,000 times without actually seeing. "Why tell me?" His paranoia was catching up to his pulse now. She could see it in the vein at his temple. "The estate pays severance if I die. Walk away money. You could be on a plane to anywhere by Monday. Because when you die, the people who killed you will burn this house to ash, looking for your financial ledger. I've spent 4 years building a life that makes sense here. A routine, a rhythm, peace." Her eyes didn't leave his. "I'm not letting your lieutenants ruin my peace for their war." She reached out. Her hand moved through the cold air between them. Her fingers brushed his palm warm, slightly damp with sweat, and took the pills. The contact lasted less than a second, but it conducted electricity. She could feel his pulse in his wrist, racing now. She dropped the capsules back into the bottle. They rattled like bones. Then she pulled 2 items from her apron pocket. A small glass vial of black powder, a single white tablet. "Activated charcoal," she said, tapping the powder into the glass of water on his nightstand. The water turned gray, cloudy. "It binds toxins." They've been dosing you with low amounts all week, that's why you've been tired. Dizzy. Your body's been conditioning itself for the final dose. Sang nodded. Slowly, the pieces clicking together in his mind. This, she held up the white tablet, is a beta blocker. It'll drop your heart rate, make you look weak when your specialist arrives. Dying, but not dead yet. Dr. Choi? Sang's voice cracked on the name. He's part of this? Everyone is part of this, Mr. Lee Yun. That's how coups work. They're not done by strangers. They're done by the people who pour your drinks. She handed him the glass, gray water and black powder. It looked like poison itself. Why should I trust you? Bonita's expression didn't change. Her face was a mask she'd perfected over 4 years of being invisible. You shouldn't, but you will, because 3 minutes ago you were about to swallow actual poison and you didn't even know it. I'm the only person in this house who's been paying attention. Sang lifted the glass, stared at it, at her, at the impossible geometry of a maid holding his life in her hands. He drank. It tasted like ash and survival and the death of everything he thought he knew about his world. The gate buzzer rang at 12:47 a.m., sharp, insistent, cutting through the silence like a blade. Bonita was in the kitchen when she heard it. She'd been preparing. She pulled a small brown bottle from her apron pocket menthol oil, the kind used for muscle aches, and dabbed it under her eyes. The fumes made them water immediately. She mussed her hair with wet hands, made herself look frantic, afraid, stupid. By the time she opened the front door, she was the perfect portrait of a terrified servant. Oh, thank God you're here, Dr. Choi. Her voice broke exactly right, cracked on the edges. Mr. Lee Yun, he's not responding. I tried to wake him for his evening medication and he won't wake up. His breathing is so shallow and I didn't know what to do and Shh. Dr. Choi was a thin man with wire-frame glasses and the kind of face that made people confess things. Soft. Understanding. He patted her shoulder like you'd pat a frightened animal. I'm sure it's nothing to worry about. Let me examine him. I'll make tea, Bonita said, her voice still trembling. For my nerves. Would you like some? Please, I can't just stand here doing nothing. That would be lovely, Miss Jackson. Very thoughtful. She led him through the house, up the stairs, down the hallway to the master suite. The tea was already made. She'd brewed it an hour ago in the butler's pantry off Sang's bedroom chamomile with honey, elderflower, and 2 grams of a pharmaceutical-grade muscle relaxant dissolved into the sugar. Not enough to knock him unconscious. Not enough to make him suspicious. Just enough to blur the edges of his perception. Make his fingertips numb. His focus drift like smoke. By the time Dr. Choi reached Sang's bedside, he'd finished half the cup. Sang was lying on the bed exactly as Bonita had positioned him. On his back, arms at his sides, chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. The beta blocker had dropped his heart rate to 50 beats per minute, slow enough to look like a failing engine. Dr. Choi set down his teacup, pulled a stethoscope from his leather bag, pressed 2 fingers to Sang's wrist to check his pulse. His own fingers, compromised by the relaxant, couldn't feel the subtle strength still there. The pulse registered in his drugged nervous system as weak, thready, dying. He pulled out a penlight, shined it in Sang's eyes. Sang had practiced this, keeping his pupils sluggish, his gaze unfocused, his body slack. Miss Jackson. Dr. Choi's voice was soft, gentle. The voice of a man delivering bad news with practiced compassion. I think you should prepare yourself. His heart is failing. The muscle is giving out. It's only a matter of time now. Bonita let out a sob. Theatrical. Perfect. Her hand flew to her mouth. Should I call someone? His uncle? The hospital? Please. There must be something. No. Dr. Choi stood. Placed a hand on her shoulder. There's nothing they can do at this stage. Let him rest. I'll stay with you until the end comes. But 10 minutes later, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Frowned. I apologize. There's an emergency. Another patient. But I'll return in 2 hours to check on him. To help you with the arrangements. Thank you, doctor. Bonita's voice was small, broken. Thank you for everything. She walked him to the door. Watched through the window as his car pulled through the gates and disappeared into the night. Then she turned. Sang was sitting up in bed, his eyes wide and white in the darkness. Who are you? He whispered. Not angry, not confused, terrified. Bonita pulled the menthol-soaked tissue from her pocket, wiped her face clean. The tears disappeared. The mask fell away. What was left was something harder. Sharper. "Someone who knows how to disappear," she said. "And right now, Mr. Leon, you need to learn the same skill. Fast." The server room in the basement smelled like ozone and recycled air. Banks of computer servers hummed like a mechanical heartbeat. The temperature was kept at 55 degrees to keep the machines from overheating. Bonita's breath misted when she spoke. Her fingers moved across the keyboard like she'd been born doing it. Fast, certain, no hesitation. Sang stood behind her, watching lines of code scroll across multiple monitors, and realized he'd never actually seen her hands move this way. In 4 years, he'd only ever seen them fold laundry, pour coffee, disappear. "I wasn't always a maid," she said without looking at him. Her eyes stayed locked on the screen where security footage was loading. 5 years ago, I was head of logistics for Meridian Pharmaceutical. We distributed medication to hospitals across 12 states. I had a corner office, a business card that opened doors. What happened? Sang's voice was quiet. He wasn't used to asking questions. He was used to knowing. "I found out we were cutting our cancer drugs with saline, selling full-price poison to dying patients. Thousands of them. We were killing people for profit margins." The footage flickered on screen. The estate's front gate, the south entrance, the garage. "I went to the FBI, testified in front of a grand jury, told the truth." She pulled up a timestamp from 3 hours ago. The playback showed the guards doing their rounds, but something was wrong with the loop. Obvious once you knew what to look for. "They destroyed me for it," Bonita continued. Her voice was flat, empty of emotion because the emotion had been burned out years ago. Blacklisted from every corporate position in the country. "My ex-husband, a police officer on Meridian's shadow payroll, he filed false reports, restraining orders. Made it look like I was unstable, dangerous. Made me a ghost. So you became a maid." "I became invisible." She typed a command. The screen split into 4 views. Invisibility is the best protection. You can't hunt what you can't see. She hit enter. The surveillance footage changed. Real time now, not the loop. What they saw made the cold air in the server room feel warm by comparison. The guards weren't guarding. They were welding. The south gate, the side entrance, every exit route. Bright sparks fell like dying stars as metal fused to metal. "They're not protecting the house," Sang said. His voice sounded far away, distant. "They're sealing us in, sealing the tomb." Bonita checked her watch. The numbers glowed green in the dark. "Dr. Choi texted your uncle at 1 a.m. Message said, it's done. They'll send a cleanup crew at 7 to confirm you're dead and retrieve your financial ledger. That gives us 5 hours and 43 minutes. Sang's hand found the back of a chair, gripped it hard enough that his knuckles went white. "The ledger's in the safe. 2nd floor study. If they get it, they won't find it here, because we won't be here." Sang turned to look at her, really look at her. This woman who'd spent 4 years being invisible in his house, who knew his schedule better than he did, who apparently knew how to read surveillance patterns and spot pharmaceutical fraud and dose muscle relaxants with precision timing. "You weren't just a logistics manager," he said. "It wasn't a question. No." Bonita's fingers stopped moving on the keyboard. She turned to face him. "I was the best. I could track a shipment of aspirin from factory to pharmacy and tell you exactly how many minutes it sat in traffic. I could spot a stolen load from 3 states away just by reading manifests. I saw patterns nobody else saw, and now you fold my shirts. Now I see different patterns." She stood, moved past him toward the stairs. "Your head of security checks his phone 7 times an hour. Your uncle's driver parks at a 45-degree angle, the same angle getaway drivers use. Dr. Choi's prescription pad has 3 missing sheets. You want to know how I knew you were being poisoned? Because I've been watching the people around you commit small treasons for 3 years. Tonight they just got louder about it." Sang followed her up the stairs. His mind was racing, recalculating. 4 years of having this woman in his house, and he'd never once asked her last name. Never once wondered why someone with her education and her accent was working for minimum wage plus room and board. "Bonita," he said. Her first name felt strange in his mouth, unfamiliar. "Why didn't you run? Why stay in my house if you knew something was coming?" She stopped on the landing, turned. In the dim light from the basement, her face was half shadow. "Because running is what I've been doing for 5 years. And I'm tired, Mr. Lee Yun. I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of being afraid. Her eyes met his. Dark, steady. So when I saw them moving against you, I made a choice. I could run again, or I could make a stand somewhere that mattered. Why here? Why me? Because you're a monster who built his empire on blood and fear. Her voice didn't waver. But you're not a liar. And in a world full of people who smile while they poison you, that counts for something. She turned and kept walking. We have 5 hours. Stop asking questions and start moving. They couldn't use the elevator. The hallway to the main staircase was compromised through the cracked server room door. Bonita had spotted 2 guards stationed at the second-floor landing. Professional, armed, waiting. There's another way, she said. She led him through corridors he'd never seen, service hallways that existed behind the walls of his own house like a parallel world, past the industrial kitchen with its steel surfaces and walk-in freezers, through the linen storage room that smelled like lavender and starch, to a small metal hatch built into the wall at waist height. The laundry chute, Sang said. He stared at it like she'd suggested they jump off the roof. You're not serious. Do I look like I'm joking? Bonita pulled the hatch open. Cold air rushed out. The shaft dropped 3 stories straight down into darkness. It smelled like bleach and fabric softener and old metal. It empties into the industrial hamper in the basement laundry. From there we can reach the garage through the service tunnel. She was already climbing in. Feet first, controlled, like she'd done this before. Sang stood frozen, looking down into the shaft. It was narrow, tight, the walls close enough to touch on both sides. 3 stories of vertical darkness. His breathing changed, shallow, quick. His chest felt tight. Claustrophobia. Bonita registered it immediately. I can't. His voice came out thin, stretched. I can't do tight spaces. Since I was a kid, Bonita grabbed his face with both hands, forced him to look at her instead of the darkness. Her palms were warm against his skin. Listen to me. You are not the CEO right now. You are not the head of the Leon Empire. You are not the man who signs checks and makes deals. Right now, you are cargo. And cargo doesn't think. It doesn't make decisions. It just moves when it's told to move. His eyes were wide, panicking, but he was listening. I need you to trust me for 30 seconds, she said. Her voice was steady, certain, like an anchor in deep water. Not trust me because you like me. Not trust me because you understand what I'm doing. Trust me because I haven't been wrong yet tonight. Can you do that? Sang's throat moved. He swallowed, nodded once, then move. He climbed into the chute. The space immediately swallowed him. Walls on both sides, the shaft pressing against his shoulders. His breath came faster, panic rising like water. I'm right behind you, Bonita's voice came from above. Breathe. Count to 30, then you're out. They descended together. Bonita used her feet and back to control their speed, bracing against the metal walls. Sang kept his eyes closed, counted. 1, 2, 3. The metal was cold and slick under his hands. 4, 5, 6. He could feel Bonita above him, solid and real. 7, 8, 9. At 28, they hit the bottom. The industrial hamper was soft, full of clean sheets that smelled like hotel laundry, white, crisp. They landed hard, but the fabric absorbed the impact. Sang was shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline crashing through his system, from doing something his body screamed was impossible. Bonita climbed out of the hamper, extended a hand. You did it. Now keep moving. He took her hand, let her pull him up. His legs felt unsteady, but he was down. He was through. Thank you, he said. Meant it. Don't thank me yet. We're not out. The garage was cathedral dark and smelled like motor oil and wealth. Sang's armored Mercedes sat in the first bay, black paint gleaming under the single overhead light. Custom bulletproof glass. Run-flat tires. $140,000 of German engineering designed to keep him safe from the world outside. It hadn't occurred to him that the real threat was inside. Not that one, Bonita said, walking past the Mercedes without slowing. They'll have rigged it, tracker at minimum. Explosive if they're being thorough. She led him to the back corner where the service vehicles were parked. A riding mower with grass still stuck to the blades, a pressure washer coiled with hoses, and a 2015 Honda Civic with a dented passenger side fender and a rosary hanging from the rearview mirror. We're escaping in this? Sang stared at it. We're escaping in something they'd never think to check. Get in. The interior smelled like vanilla air freshener and old French fries. The passenger seat had a coffee stain on the fabric. The floor mat was worn through in places. It was the most normal car Sang had ever been in, the most human. Bonita started the engine with an actual metal key. It coughed, turned over, settled into an uneven idle that made the whole car vibrate. And then, a red LED started blinking on the dashboard. Small, subtle, tucked near the speedometer where you'd only see it if you were looking. But Sang was looking. His hand went to his boot. Came up with a knife 4 inches of carbon steel with a grip worn smooth from use. He pressed it to Bonita's ribs before she could react. The tip dimpled her uniform. "You're tracking me?" Bonita didn't move, didn't take her hands off the steering wheel. Her voice came out calm, measured, like she'd expected this moment. "That tracker sends a signal to a PO. Box in Newark, Ohio, 12-hour intervals. It makes my ex-husband think I'm there, living small, working at a diner, still invisible." The knife stayed pressed against her side. "You expect me to. If you destroy it, the signal stops. He stops seeing me where he expects to see me, and he starts looking for real. And when he looks, he finds. That's what he does. That's what he's good at." Her eyes met his in the rearview mirror. "I've been 1 step ahead of him for 5 years because I control what he sees. You take that away, we both die, just in different ways." Rain started hitting the garage roof. Soft at first, then harder. A percussion that sounded like the universe weighing in. The silence between them was thick, heavy. Sang's hand on the knife, Bonita's hands on the wheel, the engine idling rough, the red light blinking its steady pulse like a heartbeat. 5 years, Bonita said quietly. "I've been running for 5 years, 14 cities, 23 jobs, 7 different hair colors. I've learned to sleep with my shoes on. I keep $3,000 in cash taped inside a teddy bear. I know the location of every women's shelter between here and the Canadian border. Why not just kill him? Because he's a police officer. Because killing him would prove everything he said about me in those false reports. That I'm unstable, violent, a threat." She took a breath, let it out slow. "I'd rather live invisible than die proven right." Sang understood that in his bones. The weight of being right in a world that punished you for speaking truth. He'd built his empire by making people afraid to tell him the truth, and now he was sitting in a dented Civic holding a knife to the woman who'd told him everything and nearly died for it. He looked at her hands on the wheel. They were shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline finally dumping out of her system after 30 seconds in a laundry chute with a panicking billionaire, after dosing a doctor with muscle relaxants, after performing an act of mercy for a man who'd never bothered to learn her last name. Sang holstered the knife. The sound of the blade sliding back into leather seemed very loud in the small car. Then he reached over and turned up the car heater. Warm air flooded the cabin, smelling like dust burning off old vents. It was a small gesture, barely a movement. But Bonita's shoulders dropped, just slightly, just enough to matter. "Thank you," she said. "You saved my life. Least I can do is keep you from freezing." Sang leaned back in the passenger seat. The springs complained. "I'm sorry. For the knife. For not trusting you. You shouldn't trust me. I'm still a stranger who's been in your house for 4 years and you never noticed." But there was something softer in her voice now. Less like steel. More like flesh. "But I'm glad you put the knife away. Where are we going?" "Somewhere public. Somewhere we can think without walls closing in." She put the car in gear, hit the button on the garage door opener clipped to the visor. The old motor whined to life. "Somewhere your uncle won't expect to find a billionaire at 3 a.m. The door opened. Rain poured down outside, turning the world into silver streaks. The city glittered in the distance, all lights and glass and possibility. Bonita drove them into the storm. The diner was the kind of place that existed outside of time. Red vinyl booths with duct tape on the tiers, laminate tables that had seen a million coffee cups, a neon sign in the window that buzzed and flickered, casting pink light across the wet parking lot. At 3:17 a.m., they were the only customers except for a trucker at the counter reading a newspaper from yesterday. The waitress was 60 if she was a day, with gray hair pulled back and eyes that had seen everything twice. She brought them coffee without asking. Black, hot, in thick white mugs that could survive a nuclear blast. "You two need menus or you already know what you want?" "Just coffee," Bonita said. "Thank you." The waitress nodded, didn't ask questions. That's what 3 a.m. was for. Questions died at 3 a.m. Sang wrapped his hands around the mug. Let the heat seep into his fingers. Outside, rain hammered the windows. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed their eternal song. The diner smelled like coffee and bacon grease, and the kind of hope that only existed in places that stayed open all night. They sat across from each other in a booth by the window. Bonita's face looked different in this light, softer, more human, less like the ghost who'd haunted his house for 4 years. "Your coffee is getting cold," she said. Sang took a sip. It tasted like truck stops and honesty. "It's good. It's terrible, but it's real." They sat in silence. Outside, a semi-truck pulled into the lot. Inside, the trucker at the counter paid his check and left. The door chimed. Rain blew in. The waitress wiped down tables that were already clean. Bonita's burner phone rang. The sound cut through the diner like a scream. She looked at the screen. Her face went to stone. "It's your uncle," she said. Sang's hand tightened on his mug. "Don't answer." But she was already swiping to accept. "Hello?" She put it on speaker. Set it on the table between them like evidence. "Miss Jackson." The voice that came through was smooth, cultured, the kind of voice that bought senators and ordered executions with the same pleasant tone. "I trust everything proceeded as planned?" "He's dead." Bonita's voice was flat, empty, the voice of a woman reporting facts. "I'm handling the cleanup now." "Excellent. Truly excellent. You've done well." There was warmth in the uncle's voice. Approval, like he was praising a dog for fetching. "I need you to bring me his signet ring, proof of death. Bring it to the shipyard, Pier 7. Dawn. Can you manage that?" "Yes, sir, I can do that." "Good girl. And Bonita?" The warmth drained from his voice like water from a tub. What was left was cold. "Final. Don't get creative on me. Don't start thinking you're smarter than you are. We know about the police file in Chicago. We know your ex-husband has been looking for a reason to visit this city. It would be unfortunate if someone gave him your current address. If someone told him exactly where to find you. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Bonita's hands were flat on the table, not shaking, perfectly still. "I understand." "Dawn. Pier 7. Don't be late." The line went dead. The diner was quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the rain. The waitress refilled the trucker's abandoned cup even though he was gone. Old habits. Sang stared at the phone on the table, then at Bonita. "He thinks you're his asset. He paid you to kill me. He paid me $10,000 3 weeks ago." Bonita picked up her coffee, took a long sip, set it down. "Wired to an account he thought was mine. I took the money, used it to rent 3 different safe houses across the city, bought surveillance equipment, prepaid burner phones, built contingencies. For what? For tonight." She met his eyes. "I knew someone in your circle was moving against you. I didn't know who. So I made them all think I was on their side. Your uncle, Dr. Choi, your head of security. I let them all believe they'd bought me, that I was just another person with a price." Sang's mind was racing, recalculating every interaction he'd witnessed over the past month. "But if you don't show up at the shipyard, if I don't show up, they burn everything. They give my location to my ex. They destroy every identity I've built. I'll spend the rest of my life running." Bonita traced the rim of her coffee cup with one finger. "If I do show up, they'll kill me the second I deliver the ring. Loose ends and all that. Then what do we do?" Bonita smiled. Just barely. Just a curve at the corner of her mouth that didn't reach her eyes. "We show up, but not the way they expect. That's suicide." "No." She pulled a small notepad from her pocket. Started writing. "That's a resignation letter. But first, you need to teach me everything you know about your shipping yard. Layout, crane locations, security blind spots, container manifest codes, everything." "Why?" "Because I know how to disappear, but you know how to fight." She slid the notepad across to him. "And we're about to do both at the same time." Sang looked down at the blank page, at the pen she'd given him, at this woman who'd saved his life and was now planning to walk into a trap armed with nothing but information and audacity. He started to write. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, 2 people who'd spent 4 years as strangers were building something that looked like trust, or revenge, or maybe both. Dawn broke over the Port Harcourt shipyard in shades of rust and gray. The shipping containers stacked like a maze, metal giants covered in salt and old paint. The air smelled like diesel and seawater and things rotting in the sun. Bonita walked in alone. She looked small against the containers. Vulnerable. She wore the same Maid uniform from the estate black dress. White collar, sensible shoes. Her hands were empty except for a small white envelope. The uncle was waiting at the center of the yard, standing in a clearing between 3 40-foot containers. He was surrounded by 6 men, all armed, all professional. They looked like they'd done this before. Probably had. "Miss Jackson." The uncle smiled. It was the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. "You came. I wasn't entirely sure you would. You didn't give me a choice." Bonita walked forward, stopped 10 feet away from the circle of men. "You wanted proof?" She tossed the envelope on the ground between them. The uncle nodded to one of his men. The guard picked it up with gloved hands, opened it carefully, checked for wires, for tricks. Inside was a ring. Plastic. The kind you get from a soda bottle cap. The uncle's face went cold. "Dangerous. What is this?" "My 2 weeks' notice," Bonita said. That's when the shipping container fell. 4 tons of steel dropped from the crane above, slamming into the ground directly behind the uncle's men, blocking the only exit from the clearing. The impact shook the earth hard enough to knock 2 of the guards off their feet. Everyone spun toward the crane. Sang Li Yan waved from the operator's booth 30 feet up. Then he hit another button. A second container swung overhead like a wrecking ball. The uncle's men scattered. Chaos, shouting, hands reaching for weapons. But there was nowhere to run. Containers on 3 sides. The dropped container blocking the 4th. They were trapped in a steel cage. Bonita was already moving. She pulled a taser from the pocket of her uniform, hit the closest guard in the neck. 50,000 volts. He went down hard, twitching. Sang jumped from the crane booth, grabbed a ladder welded to the side of a container, slid down, hit the ground running, grabbed a lead pipe from a supply rack near the loading dock. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't choreographed like movies. It was desperate and messy and human. Bonita fought like someone who'd learned in parking lots and women's shelters' eyes, throat, knees. Sang fought like someone who'd never had to before but was learning fast and had rage to fuel him. They met in the center of the clearing, back to back, breathing hard. The uncle tried to run, slipped past 2 of his own men, made it 5 steps before Sang caught him, slammed him against a rust-streaked container wall, raised the pipe above his head. The uncle's eyes went wide. "Wait, don't!" Bonita's voice cut through the chaos. Sharp, clear. "Don't do it." Sang's arm froze. The pipe trembled in his hand. Every muscle in his body screamed to finish it, to end the man who'd tried to poison him, who'd nearly won, who'd turned his entire world into a trap. "If you kill him," Bonita said, walking toward them, "you're just a butcher, just another monster with a pipe and a body count." She was breathing hard. There was blood on her collar, but it wasn't hers. Let him live with nothing. Bankrupt him. Destroy his reputation. Strip him of everything that matters. That's the death he actually fears. The uncle stared up at Sang, terrified. For the first time in his life, utterly powerless. Sang looked at the pipe in his hand. At the uncle's face. At the choice. He dropped the pipe. It clattered on the concrete. Loud as a verdict. Final as a door closing. "You're done," Sang said quietly. His voice didn't shake. "I'm freezing every account, calling every favor you thought was yours, burning every bridge you thought was built. By Monday, you'll be a name people cross the street to avoid. By Wednesday, you'll be a ghost." He stepped back, let the uncle crumple against the container. Bonita stood next to Sang. They looked down at the uncle together, at the 6 guards on the ground, at the mess they'd made of a coup that should have been clean. "We should go," Bonita said, "before someone calls the police." "Yeah." Sang dropped the pipe. "We should go." They walked out of the shipyard together. The sun was rising. The city was waking up. Somewhere, people were drinking coffee and complaining about traffic and living normal lives. Behind them, the uncle sat in the rust and the wreckage and the death of everything he'd built. 1 week later, the Li Yan penthouse looked different in daylight, clean, bright, like the air itself had changed. The windows were open, real air flowing through instead of recycled cold. It smelled like possibility. Bonita stood in the foyer wearing jeans and a sweater. Civilian clothes. Her hair was down. Sang had never seen it down before. She looked younger, more herself. A suitcase sat by her feet, packed, ready. Sang emerged from his office. He'd showered, shaved, changed out of the clothes he'd been wearing for 24 hours. He looked almost human again. Almost. "I transferred $5 million to your account," he said without preamble. Direct, like they were in a meeting. I bought the logistics company your ex-husband works for. He's fired, blacklisted, and there's a restraining order filed against him in 3 states. He can't touch you." Bonita stared at him. Her throat moved. "That's more than I expected. It's what you earned. It's less than you're worth." She picked up her suitcase. The handle extended with a click. "Then I guess this is goodbye. Where are you going?" "To find a new name. Maybe Seattle. Maybe Portland. Somewhere it rains a lot." She looked at him. Really looked at him. "I can't stay here, Sang. I know too much. You know too much. People like us, we're dangerous to each other." Sang didn't move, didn't block her path. He just reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder. Thick, heavy. Head of Internal Operations. Full equity stake. Decision-making authority on all security, logistics, and personnel matters. Salary plus profit sharing. Your own office, your own team. He held it out between them. Bonita looked at the door, then at the folder, then at him. "Why?" "Because I don't need a maid." Sang's voice was quiet. Honest. "I need someone who sees the things I miss. Someone who'll tell me the truth even when it costs them. Someone who's been invisible so long they know exactly how to spot when someone else is hiding." He paused. "Stay." "Not as a servant. As a partner." The silence stretched, heavy with everything unsaid, with 4 years of invisibility, with 1 night of truth, with the question of what came next. "Partners don't lie to each other," Bonita said finally. "No, they don't. Partners share risk equally. They do. And partners call each other by their first names." Sang smiled. Actually smiled. "Yes, they do. Bonita." She dropped her suitcase. The sound echoed in the marble foyer. She walked past him, past the folder still in his hand, straight to the minibar in the living room, poured 2 glasses of whiskey. Neat. Walked back and handed him one. Then she sat on the edge of his desk. Not in the chair. On the desk. Equal height. "First order of business," she said. "We fire your entire security team. Everyone who was there that night. Everyone who welded those gates." Sang sat down across from her, raised his glass. "Done. Second, we restructure your supply chains. You've been hemorrhaging money through your shipping division for 2 years. I found 12 separate inefficiencies just from reading your quarterly reports while I was vacuuming. How long have you known?" "Since month 2. You're welcome. Anything else?" "Yes." Bonita took a sip of her whiskey, looked him in the eye. "You need to stop calling me Miss Jackson. We're partners now. Use my first name. Get used to it. Bonita. Better." They sat in the bright penthouse, 2 people who'd walked through fire and come out holding the match. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, something new was being built. There's a quote from James Baldwin that goes like this: "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." Bonita and Sang faced the darkness in their lives not alone, but together, and in doing so, they didn't just survive, they transformed. This story isn't about romance, it's about recognition, about seeing the person everyone else overlooks and realizing they're the most powerful person in the room. It's about 2 people who were invisible, for different reasons, choosing to be seen by each other. She came to disappear. She stayed to be seen. And for the first time, the house wasn't a cage. It was a fortress they built together. If you found value in this story, if it made you think about the invisible people in your own life who might be carrying more weight than you know, leave a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. And tell me this: have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever been the invisible person in the room? And what happened when someone finally saw you for who you really are? Subscribe to Ruthless Romance Tales for more stories that challenge what we think we know about power, survival, and the quiet strength of people who refuse to stay invisible.